Myths and fairy tales give expression to unconscious processes, and their retelling causes these processes to come alive again and be recollected, thereby reestablishing the connection between conscious and unconscious. Carl Jung. All stories have messages embedded within their subtext. From a simple fairy tale to the greatest of epics, we can find concepts, themes, and ideas that are represented by the characters, settings, and events of the story. In a well-crafted story, these elements will create a cohesive message about these concepts that speaks to the audience, even if the audience is not completely aware that they are being presented with a message. In a story like The Three Little Pigs, the setup of the story with the pigs setting out to build their homes conveys the issue of youth and naivety inevitably having to go out into the world. The big bad wolf represents the inherent dangers of the world. The demise of the first two pigs sends a message about the dangers of carelessness, while the success of the last pig demonstrates the value of hard work and anticipation. How much a story resonates is determined by how formed the message is, how well it is embedded in the story, and how much we relate to the message. A poorly formed story may not have a grasp on its meaning, perhaps contradicting itself, or its reasoning being untraceable, or it may fail to embed its message into an effective narrative. A well-formed story, on the other hand, embeds a thoroughly considered message into an engaging and matching narrative. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, is a fantastic example of a message being embedded into a story, and its lasting impact in our culture serves as evidence for its effectiveness. Its exterior is a swashbuckling, high-seas adventure, which makes it enjoyable while it's on the screen, but what has made it last within our collective consciousness is a finely crafted message that is masterfully embedded into its narrative. So what is the message of Pirates of the Caribbean? The basis of the film's message is addressing the question of whether or not a person should break the norms of society to live how they wish. While it would seem obvious that the answer is of course a person should value their authentic life over societal norms, this film takes the question seriously, and the characters and events of the film represent an intricate and thoughtful discussion of the value and dangers of breaking the norms of society. The film starts with a ship full of people who both live strictly within and enforce societal norms, including Captain Norrington, Mr. Gibbs and other members of the British Royal Navy, and Governor Swan. The one exception is Elizabeth, who despite being restricted by the adults around her, has an interest in living outside of societal norms, which comes out in her interest in piracy.
I appreciate your fervor, but I'm concerned about the effect this subject will have upon my daughter.
My apologies, Governor Swan.
Actually, I find it all fascinating.
Yes, that's what concerns me.
The film provides good reasons for why Elizabeth would be interested in living outside of societal norms, as the characters who do seem to be starchy and rigid like Captain Norrington, worn out and fearful like Mr. Gibbs, or both fearful and rigid like her father, Governor Swan. They're restricted in their thoughts and actions, boring and predictable, and they don't seem to be enjoying life. However, the film immediately creates a counterpoint when they encounter a wrecked ship that has been destroyed by pirates, and there is an eerie and foreboding sense in the air. Within the first scene, the film creates a point that people who live within societal norms live strict and rigid lives, but creates an equal counterpoint that the realms outside of society are rife with vile and dangerous people. Thematic paradoxes like these are what makes the film engaging, as it gives the viewer's subconscious concepts to consider and track, while their conscious is being entertained by the events of the film. Shortly after the film establishes its thematic paradox, it sets up the problem for the narrative, which makes the thematic paradox personal to the main characters. Note that it is Will and Elizabeth who are the main characters in the story, and not Captain Jack Sparrow, as they are the characters whose change will answer the thematic paradox. The problem for the narrative is that Will and Elizabeth have an inherent love for each other, but are separated by the fact that they exist on opposite sides of civilized society, with Elizabeth being part of the ruling elite, while Will is a lowly blacksmith. Though they are clearly brightened by each other's presence and hold a chemistry that is not seen elsewhere in the film, their societal roles will not let them acknowledge or act on their attraction. Elizabeth is unable to act because she is too busy being hurried and stuffed into her role as part of the elite, as represented by the scene where she is squeezed into a corset that her father bought her to prepare her for a proposal from Commodore Norrington, while Will, on the other hand, is self-restrictive and unwilling to step outside of his societal role and act on his feelings for Elizabeth.
Will, so good to see you. I had a dream about you last night.
About me?
Is that entirely proper for you to...
About the day we met, do you remember?
How could I forget, Miss Swan?
Will, how many times must I ask you to call me Elizabeth?
At least once more, Miss Swan. As always.
There, see? At least the boy has a sense of propriety. Now, we really must be going. Very well.
say, Mr. Turner?
It should be noted that this makes Governor Swan and Commodore Norrington the thematic antagonists of the film. It is not Captain Barbossa, who will play a strong part in the film's thematic discussion later, but it is not his defeat that concludes the film, but a defiance against the societal norms that Governor Swan and Commodore Norrington represent and enforce. However, neither of them is evil nor unlikable. Governor Swan is kind-hearted and is doing what his procedural mind thinks is best. What he knows is society, and by society's standards, he is giving the absolute best to his daughter. When he presents Elizabeth with the restrictive corset, he thinks he's doing something good for her by outfitting her with the latest fashion and preparing her for a marriage with an accomplished officer in the Royal Navy, which will ensure her role in high society. He is doing what he thinks is best, and that's all you can expect from a person.
They done what's right by them. Can't expect more than that.
As for Commodore Norrington, he is the bravest and most noble character in the film, and does things for the betterment of others around him.
By remembering that I serve others, Mr. Sparrow, not only myself.
It was because of him that the Caribbean has been largely safe from piracy. Later in the film, he will bravely protect Port Royal and its citizens when it is attacked by Captain Barbossa, and he will ultimately lead the force that stops Barbossa's violent rampage through the Caribbean. A lesser story would have made these characters more abrasive and selfish. It would not be hard to envision Governor Swan as tyrannical and abusive, or Commodore Norrington as overly violent, harsh, and corrupt, but this would have been to the detriment of the film. Had they had tyrannical or corrupt characteristics, the thematic discussion would have turned into a critique of these obviously detrimental qualities. By not making the thematic antagonists straw men, but instead showing that these characters and the societal norms that they enforce have good reasons for being the way they are, the film takes the counterpoint to its message seriously and creates a richer, more sophisticated discussion. So, very early in the story, a thematic paradox made between the restrictiveness of society and the brutal nature of those who have left society is established, which personally affects the characters of Will and Elizabeth, who cannot follow their love for each other because of societal restrictions, but are far from willing to live a life like the pirates that they have encountered. Enter Captain Jack Sparrow, who catalyzes the events of the film and will show the solution to this problem. When Jack is introduced, his back is turned to the camera, indicating that he is primarily a mystery. When the camera cuts to his front, it is revealed that he is a dashing and attractive pirate. He stands in front of an open sky, indicating his freedom, and stands in stark contrast to Will or Elizabeth, whose scenes are primarily indoors or on a busy ship surrounded by fog. Whereas Will and Elizabeth are constantly being dictated by society, Jack does not have any of these restraints. The film then confirms that Jack is a pirate, as he salutes the bodies of hanged pirates, though this way of indicating his pirate ways is different than the way the pirate ship was presented in the first scene. Whereas the wreckage the pirate ship leaves is an indicator of violence and destruction, Jack saluting the pirates is indicative of honor and reverence. It seems that he could be a more affable and good-natured pirate. However, any thoughts of Jack being an altruist are eliminated as he immediately bribes his way into Port Royal, engages in petty theft, and reveals his intentions of commandeering a ship.
I confess. It is my intention to commandeer one of these ships, pick up a crew in Tortuga, raid, pillage, plunder, and otherwise pilfer my Weasley black guts out.
This dichotomy of good and bad actions is repeated when Jack saves Elizabeth, though not before asking if the Marines would do it first, but then threatens her life in order to escape. It is during his escape that the film indicates that Jack could be a solution to the issue of societal norms that inhibit Will and Elizabeth, as when Jack encounters Will, he immediately guesses Will's problem and taunts him for his inaction.
You need to find yourself a girl, mate. Or perhaps the reason you practice 3 hours a day is that you already found one and are otherwise incapable of wooing said strumpet. You're not a eunuch, are you?
It's abundantly clear that if Jack were in Will's situation, he would not fail to act, and that he, in his pirate ways, could be a path out of the restraints of society. However, because Jack has done both good and bad acts, it is unclear if Jack is a hero or a villain, and therefore it is unclear if Will and Elizabeth should follow down his path. And this is where the rest of the thematic discussion takes place. If Jack ends up being a good man, then his pirate ways may be worth enacting. But if he is a villain, then it would indicate that his pirate ways will lead down an unsavory path. The possibility of the path of the pirate being unsavory is solidified with the arrival of Captain Barbossa, a true villain and the embodiment of greed and treachery. Captain Barbossa and his crew leave no question about their morality as they raid Port Royal, killing soldier and civilian alike, and plundering for the sake of greed. Everything about them indicates danger and hostility, and it's easy to see why society is far preferable to them, despite its restrictiveness. However, Will is forced to abandon society after Barbossa kidnaps Elizabeth, and he frees Jack from prison, and they commandeer one of the Navy's vessels. Shortly after, the film creates another point in this thematic discussion when Jack reveals his thesis that the only rules that matter are what a man can do and what a man can't do. This thesis epitomizes the pirate spirit. Whereas Will and society have to operate along the lines of formality, Jack and all pirates know the greater truth, that they are only bound by possibility. This knowledge, however, is Pandora's box, as those who are free from society's moral guidance are free to betray, destroy, and pillage to satisfy their own personal greed like Barbossa and his crew, and it remains unclear if Jack is like Barbossa and will betray Will and Elizabeth for his own personal gain. Jack's intentions are made a little clearer at Tortuga, where they gather a crew to pursue Barbossa. In a private moment with Jack's first mate, Mr. Gibbs, who has changed his ways from being a rigid sailor to a pirate, Will learns that Barbossa used to be Jack's first mate, and the two might not be all that different. However, it is also revealed that Barbossa mutinied against Jack and commandeered the Black Pearl from him, and that Jack will only use his one-shot pistol on Barbossa. This is the film's subtle way of noting a difference between Jack and Barbossa, as it leaves it to the audience to put together the fact that everyone who Jack has previously threatened with a pistol was never truly in any danger, as the pistol was reserved for Barbossa. While Jack may hide within the reputation of pirates, he does not necessarily engage in their brutish behavior. The only exception will be later in the film, after Elizabeth burns the rum and Jack fights the urge to shoot her. Speaking of Elizabeth, while Jack and Will are pursuing the Black Pearl, Captain Barbossa reveals to her that he and the crew are cursed from taking the treasure of Cortez, which has caused them to have a hunger and thirst that cannot be satisfied, and to have a permanent and empty life. This curse is an important part of the thematic discussion, as it designates Barbossa and his crew as being representatives of greed, and makes the case that while the pursuit of greed can lead to temporary pleasures, it will cause an even greater appetite that will always eclipse what is brought to satiate it. This strengthens the case against the idea of leaving societal norms, as it seems that all pirates are seeking wealth and treasure, and perhaps they are all being propelled by this unquenchable greed.
You know, for having such a bleak outlook on pirates, you're well on your way to becoming one. Sprung a man from jail, commandeered a ship of the fleet, sailed with a buccaneer crew out of Tortuga, and you're completely obsessed with treasure.
Will clearly believes that Jack has greedy motivations, as when they catch up to the Black Pearl and are in position to intercept the ritual, Will betrays Jack and knocks him out, suspecting that Jack will use him as leverage for his own intentions. And he has good reason to suspect this. Not only has Jack been willing to engage in mischief, has schemed to use Will when he thinks he's out of earshot, but also as soon as Jack wakes up and is captured by Barbossa, he uses his knowledge that Will is a person that they need in order to lift the curse, to leverage his position. It seems very possible at this point in the film that Jack is willing to betray Will and others to get what he wants.
The girl's blood didn't work, did it? Hold your fire! You know whose blood we need. I know whose blood you need.
But what does Jack want? His stated goal is that he wants the Black Pearl, but it's not until after Barbossa captures Will, Elizabeth, and Jack's crew, and maroons Elizabeth and Jack on an island, where it is revealed that Jack doesn't want the Black Pearl for her material value, but for the freedom she represents.
That's what a ship is, you know. It's not just a keel and a hull and a deck and sails. That's what a ship needs. But what a ship is, what the Black Pearl really is freedom.
Jack wants freedom, and presumably he sees freedom in the Black Pearl because it is the fastest ship in the Caribbean, so he can outrun and evade all authority. It's this freedom that he has been searching for from the start, and what defines his character. It motivates all of his actions, and everything he does is just to get him closer to this freedom. The question remains, however, is Jack willing to be treacherous for this wish? This question is the fulcrum in the film's final battle. After Elizabeth and Jack are rescued by Norrington, Jack convinces Norrington that he will convince the pirates to leave Ile de Muerta and allow them to be ambushed by the British Royal Navy. Given how brutish the pirates have been, and that the British Royal Navy has been generally honorable, this would seem like a good act. However, it's clear Jack is up to something, as he does not warn the Navy about the pirates being immortal, and convinces the Navy to lock Elizabeth, the one person on the ship who knows, in the captain's quarters.
Now, to be quite honest with you, there's still a slight risk to those aboard the Dauntless, which includes the future Mrs. Commodore.
Sorry, but it's for your own safety.
Coward, the Commodore! What did I have to tell him? The pirates! They curse, they can't be killed!
Don't worry, miss, he's already informed of that. A little mermaid flopped up on deck and told him the whole story.
This is Jack Sparrow's doing!
It then really seems that Jack is willing to commit treachery for his wish when he makes a deal with Barbossa to help him defeat the Navy and sail under his banner.
Just hear me out, mate. You order your men to row out to the Dauntless. They do what they do best. Robert's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. There you are with 2 ships. The makings of your very own fleet. Of course, you'll take the grandest as your flagship, and who's to argue? But what of the Pearl? Name me captain. I'll sail under your colors. I'll give you 10% of me plunder, and you get to introduce yourself as Commodore Barbossa. Savvy?
I suppose in exchange you wanted me not to kill the whelp.
No, not at all. By all means, kill the whelp. Just not yet. Wait to lift the curse until the opportune moment.
Had the film ended on this note, this would have been a stern warning against those who break societal norms, as even the ones who might seem cooperative are actually treacherous underneath. However, Jack does not go through with this deal, and instead uses it to clear the cave of pirates so he can lift the curse and defeat Barbossa, and in doing so, allow the Royal Navy to defeat the pirates.
I must admit, Jack, I thought I had you figured. It turns out you're a hard man to predict.
Me, I'm dishonest. And a dishonest man you can always trust to be dishonest. Honestly, it's the honest ones you want to watch out for, because you can never predict when they're going to do something incredibly stupid.
So why didn't Jack honor his agreement with Barbossa? The answer is his wish. Unlike Barbossa, who has a material greed that can be met through treacherous and malicious means, Jack has a pure wish for freedom that can only be met through specific means.
Now, bring me that horizon.
Because the fulfillment of his wish fulfills his spirit and not a physical need, the wish is pure and prevents Jack from committing villainy. Had he agreed to Barbossa's terms, he would have been subject to Barbossa's authority and always threatened with Barbossa's established treachery, and this would not have been true freedom. And it's not just in this battle where Jack's pure wish has prevented him from engaging in malicious behavior. Rather, it has guided him from villainy this entire time. At the beginning of the film, when he threatened Elizabeth, had he actually harmed her, he would have lost his leverage and been captured. Same goes for when he commandeered the Navy ship and threatened the lieutenant. During the first ritual on Ile de Muerta, it is unlikely that Jack would have betrayed Will, because he, again, would have lost his leverage. Had he identified Will to Barbossa, then Jack would have been killed, or subservient to Barbossa at best. Also note that had everyone listened to Jack before the final battle, no one would have gotten hurt.
I go in, I convinced Barbossa to send his men out with their little boats. You and your mates return to the Dauntless and blast the bejesus out of them with your little cannons, eh? What do you have to lose?
Nothing I'd lament being rid of.
You order your men to row out to the Dauntless. They do what they do best.
What are we doing here? Pirates come out, unprepared and unawares. We catch them in a crossfire, send them down to see old Hob.
I know why we're here. I meant, why aren't we doing what Mr. Sparrow said we should do? With the cannons and all.
Because it was Mr. Sparrow who said it.
All hands to the boats! Apologies. You give the orders.
Gents, take a walk.
Off to the boats.
As the immortal pirates would have rowed out towards the Navy, and the Navy would have safely shot at them from their ship. Note that Jack is not altruistic. He is in fact completely selfish, and in these instances is never thinking about others. However, he is a good man because he has a pure wish. He is not materially greedy like Barbossa, which the film has established as a detriment to both the greedy and the world around them, but he is seeking something that satisfies his soul. This pursuit is not only what prevents him from committing truly malicious acts, but it ends up doing good for the world. It's his pursuit of the pearl that ends Barbossa's reign of terror, replaces it with a more joyful and benevolent crew, and will ultimately teach Will and Elizabeth to break the constraints of society to fulfill their own pure wishes. And this is ultimately the thesis of the film and the solution to the paradox that it presents. Yes, the world outside of rigid society is rife with people who are following their greed and causing chaos. However, it is okay and even necessary to forego societal norms to pursue your wish. And if your wish is pure, not only will you do good for yourself, but you will also do good for the world. This is the lesson that Will learns at the very end of the film. Despite failing to break societal norms and to pursue his pure wish of being with Elizabeth at Isla de Muerta, it is the scheduled execution of Jack that forces Will to change. Will has now realized that Jack is a good man, and he realizes that he must prioritize his conscience over his place in society. This finally gives him the ability to cross over societal lines and to tell Elizabeth that he loves her.
Elizabeth, I should have told you every day from the moment I met you. I love you.
He is a changed man who acknowledges and pursues his pure wish and is unafraid to break societal norms. He's a pirate, hence the name of the film's iconic musical piece and Elizabeth's last line. This change ends up being infectious as Elizabeth follows suit and stands between the Marines and Jack, and both Norrington and Governor Swan both realize that Jack is a good man and support him in their own ways.
Perhaps on the rare occasion pursuing the right course demands an act of piracy. Piracy itself can be the right course.
Commodore! What about Sparrow?
Oh, I think we can afford to give him one day's head start.
As I stated at the beginning of this video, thematic discourse in films is what makes them memorable. Films can touch on complex and deep themes that we might not otherwise have a chance to consider. Even though we may not be consciously tracking that a film is undergoing thematic discourse, our unconscious is able to take it in. So while our conscious mind might be seeing Jack as triple-crossing the Royal Navy and Barbossa, which is interesting enough to watch, our unconscious is trying to figure out whether those who break societal norms are heroes or villains. Pirates of the Caribbean does this so well because it takes both its thesis and counter-thesis seriously and creates a thoughtful and continuing discourse throughout the film. This discourse yields wisdom like the pitfalls of greed, the truth that the only rules that really matter are what a man can do and what a man can't do, and ultimately that a pursuit of a pure wish is a worthy goal which will cause you to do good for yourself and others. This is what makes the film stay in our collective consciousness for more than 20 years after its release and a powerful example of storytelling.
Thank you.
Captain Sparrow. The Black Pearl is yours.
On deck, you scabrous dogs! Hands to braces! Let go and hold to run free! Now, bring me that